Hello, and welcome to another episode of Broadway and Other Kiwi Dreams, a podcast in which I, James Shera, talk to inspiring and creative people in and around the New Zealand theatre industry and find out how they got that way. Today I am joined by Michael Bell. Michael's career began when he accidentally opened a recording studio at 19 years of age. Since then, he has grown both himself and his businesses into staples of the Christchurch, New Zealand and Australian theatre scenes. Michael joins the podcast to talk about his musical upbringing as the son of two musicians. He details the aforementioned accidental beginning of his career, and of course, we find out how Michael was able to erect a large purple croissant in the middle of Christchurch City. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy a conversation with Michael on Broadway and Other Kiwi Dreams. Hey Mikey, how's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks for the great introduction that you haven't recorded yet.
Don't ruin the illusion. How's this crazy time been for you?
Yeah, it's been a weird time, eh? So we've decided to cancel this year's Playhouse tour, so that's all working out what to do there, if we can sort of tread water for another 12 months and pick it up next year and so on, and lots of shows cancelling for Little A. That's the audiences are pretty understanding of that. Mostly, some of them aren't, but most have been amazing. It's just sort of demoralizing work. It's like, funding applications been deleted, the cap's been lowered, and you can apply now again if you can do a project by the end of September. And so it's kind of like, well, just redoing this work then. And it's, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I don't find funding applications like super inspiring. So it's just kind of that getting up and like trying to drag your feet like the 1 meter from my bed to my computer in the morning and doing that kind of work and being motivated. But other than that, it's a weird time and a bit of a downtime for everyone. So
yeah, everyone's kind of in the same boat as well. So
yeah.
So the first question I like to ask people is, what is their favorite musical? Do you have a favorite musical?
I do, actually. It's the Book of Mormon, which I've seen 3 times, and I was just about to see for the 4th time until it got cancelled.
Oh,
yeah.
At least you saw it 3 times.
yeah. So I know, spoilers, I know what happens.
Why is that your favorite musical?
I guess I was raised a Christian, so I think the jokes kind of I identify with like quite personally, and so they really make me belly laugh. And there's kind of not a lot you can fault in the music. So it's just, to me, it's a really solid musical. Great music, great story, great laughs, and written from a place of like knowledge as well, not just people who don't know anything about the Bible. It's
Speaking of growing up, both of your parents music teachers or just your mum?
Yeah, mum is a music teacher. Dad's a computer science lecturer.
He does music as well, eh?
Yeah, that's right. He did his letters in the organ and plays piano. So we had a family band. So I joined that when I was 11, and that was my job through high school, is playing at weddings every weekend.
What instruments did you learn?
Trumpet, piano, bass, drums. Yeah.
And what did you play in the band?
First was drums, and then I moved to bass when my brother joined the band on drums.
Nice. Moving up to high school, I heard that you were quite into accounting.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to be an accountant. Was my plan. Yes, switched to music in my last couple of years. Glad I did. Nothing against accountants, but I'm really enjoying the music. Quite fulfilling on a non-financial level anyway.
Why did you move away from accounting into music? Was there a specific thing that happened, or?
There was, actually. I had a bass lesson with Tom Rainey in year 11, and he just blew my mind with a whole lot of theory that I hadn't done before. I didn't know existed, and gave me a bunch of CDs to listen to. We listened to CDs then, and I was like, man, this is really, really awesome. And I get really, really obsessive about stuff. So I was like, I just like read all the books, and started practicing 3 hours a day. And I was like, man, this is where my heart is. But that was the turning point for me, I think.
So your accounting side, was that sort of what brought you into creating a business and doing all that stuff, or was it something else that made you want to do that?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I guess the accounting side of things has really helped. Like, if you find it, the accounting language easy to understand, it makes it a lot easier to kind of, I guess, put together a business plan and run your business. That certainly helped. And I think really I started my first business by complete accident. So that was Orange Studio. And I was just doing backing tracks for my mates. So Rebecca Nelson was one of my mates at high school, and Hamish Oliver was working for Whitebait at the time. He couldn't keep up with all the stuff that he was doing for them, so he passed some work on to me, and I just ended up doing more backing tracks and recordings and stuff like that. So it was just word of mouth that really started. Found out about a few government jobs that were going, so put in some bids for them, and there were some really good contracts. So kind of those were probably the best years that business ever had financially, when didn't even know it at the time. But I think it's that, and just a bit of having enough privilege to like be able to take risks helped as well. Just living at home, not having rent to pay, stuff, just like all the little things like that makes it kind of easier to start your first business. So I just always acknowledge that when I talk about the businesses and things like that. It was the second business, New Zealand Playhouse, which was a lot more thought through in terms of a business plan, and this is the product and so on. Orange just really evolved into this big monster that I can't really control anymore, actually. But with Playhouse, it's more because the Orange is there's no real product that we really offer. We just kind of offer everything, which is really cool, but also our Achilles heel, because it's different every day. So we just can't really implement systems. But New Zealand Playhouse, there's like our product. We do a show each year, and we know exactly who our customer is. We know how to, I guess, sell the product to the customer. So that's been a lot better in terms of getting systems and so on. But sorry if I'm jumping ahead.
No, it's fine. Before we do jump ahead, I want to ask you, you've learnt a bunch of instruments, but is there any instrument that you haven't learnt yet that you really would like to have a go on?
I brought a guitar home from the studio for the lockdown with the intention of learning that. Hasn't happened yet. I'm really struggling, but if I did, that would be the one that I want to learn next. Somehow the days will end up getting away. It's really annoying.
Cool. So after high school, you went on to do what was then called jazz school. Did you do that for 3 years? Kind of.
Technically, yes. I kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. Technically, I was doing kind of first and second year full-time at the same time I was doing year 13 full-time. At the time, they were contracted by the university to deliver the third year. So I kind of had the prerequisites for third year when I left high school. So I just ended up doing the third year straight away. Yeah, ended up finishing when I was 18.
Which is crazy, because then when you were only 19, you started Orange Studios, which it blows my mind every time I remember that. 19 years old is so young, and for it to have grown so much over the span of however many years it's been, it's like you started that at 19 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it was at that stage, it was a small room in my parents' house, and you put a microphone and the singer's standing a meter behind you. Everyone's got headphones on, and it's
Was it called Orange Studios at that point?
Yeah,
or?
Only by accident again, because we were working out what Hessian colour to put on the walls, and just at a whim I found out that there was orange Hessian, and you know me, I'm like, bright colours, awesome. So so we put orange Hessian on the room, on the walls, called it the Orange Room, the Orange Studio, and ended up registering it as a business for tax reasons at the time. As Orange Studio Limited. And then like everyone thought that my favorite color was orange, so like for the next decade all my birthday presents were all like orange colored. So
great. And then you could say that it's all Orange Studio branded.
Yeah Everyone can tax write off the birthday presents.
Is there a specific point where you think it sort of turned into a thing? Is there an artist that recorded with you where you were like, oh wow, this is massive? Or
I'm trying to remember my thoughts at the time. I made a movie, so a feature film, which we released in 2007, even available on Amazon. It's had one digital sale ever, which was amazing. And the coolest thing about that is that you can, at the time, they would send you like monthly spreadsheets of who has purchased. So every month it was like 0, 0, 0, 0. And then one month it came in, it's like someone has purchased your movie digitally, and it had the email address of the guy that bought it. And I was so stoked. So like I Googled his email address and came across his blog, which was at the top it said, "Hi, can't remember what his name was. Hi, I'm Mark, and my interests are running and watching bad movies." Actually, I watched it last year and I was actually like, I'm really proud of what we did.
You can credit your whole career to Mark.
Yeah. I must look that up again. But yeah, I suppose that was kind of like, and the whole thing was done through the branding. And I took the branding and the business, I think, probably more seriously then than I do now.
Sure. Did you do it by yourself or did you have a partner at the time?
No, it was just me. The first employee was Chris Finity in 2009, and we've kind of done heaps together since then.
Obviously, hiring Chris in 2009 also coincides with the start of Playhouse.
Man, you done research. I love it.
Of course. So what was the impetus for Playhouse?
So a guy called Marcus Hutchies, who had just graduated NASDAR, he was in a show, actually at the Court at the time, and afterwards the two of us, it was like 2 a.m. we were sitting in my car, I think I was dropping him home or something, and he was like, "Do you think it's possible to make a living as an actor in New Zealand?" And I said, you got to make the opportunities. And we kind of both had various theatre experiences as well. And we were like, we think we can improve on what is sort of offered to both audiences and the staff. And we both thought it would be a great idea to do this touring kids show. So we went and had a coffee with Greg Cooper and we're like, "Can we use your script?" And he was like, yeah. So we did. And and the idea was basically to create work for Marcus. And then he ended up being cast in a court show just after we kind of booked all the schools in, because we were just phoning up schools being like, "Would you like our show? It's going to be good, we promise." We booked 60 schools in that year. And then he got cast in a court show and was like, "Actually, I might just do that." And so we ended up with a completely new cast, which was so good. And also at the end of that first tour, we kind of had some creative differences. So we ended up parting ways, and I just, long story short, I ended up just taking on Playhouse by myself from 2010.
So you said you had 60 schools in the first year. Obviously, your parents are teachers, so did that kind of help with getting contacts for that? Or?
For my mum's school, it did. I found that kind of teachers, I don't think they kind of talk to each other as much as we'd like, word of mouth to work. All the time we've tried, "Hey, tell your friends at other schools to have us." And, every now and again it happens, but most of the time the schools just book us. Yeah, my mum's school booked in. But the rest of them around the South Island, we were just literally just picking up the phone to them and saying, "Hi, we're from New Zealand Playhouse. Would you like to have our show?" And most of them obviously said no, but enough of them did. I'm trying to remember how we managed to get all those schools.
Yeah, because 60 is quite a lot for a new business.
I mean, it was a lot of phoning.
But it obviously worked for a certain number of years, because now over 700 schools across both New Zealand and Australia.
Yep. So we were doing 750 to 800 schools for about 4 years in a row, but we've just downsized. So now we're at about 450 schools a year. So we've cut out the places that have been really problematic and difficult for us, and shortened the tour much down, and it's a lot smoother now.
And the high schools as well.
And the high schools, yeah. So we're not doing high schools at this stage anymore.
Do you have a favourite show that you produced with Playhouse? Not because of the cast or anything, but just the show itself. Is there a show that you're particularly proud of? And you don't have to say my show.
I was really proud of that show. That was a really, really good year, James.
It was.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, last year I performed in The Tortoise and the Hare with Playhouse. just a bit of context.
And that was a banging show. 2011 was a really cool year. We did the Great Rugby Robbery. So Greg wrote it like a year before the Rugby World Cup. We did our last show a week before the Rugby World Cup final. And the whole plot of the show culminates in a New Zealand versus France final. And then like France is ahead until the end, and then New Zealand wins at the last minute. And then the actual Rugby World Cup final pretty much mirrored this story that we'd been telling in primary schools for like the 2 terms leading up to the Rugby World Cup final.
That's
and
crazy.
We were so stoked.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Was that after the earthquakes?
Yeah, that was just after the earthquakes.
So it was kind of after the earthquakes, getting back into it sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was a bit weird, like rehearsing, in other places. I mean, probably the weirdest thing about the earthquakes is actually so at that stage we did the high school play in term 1 and then the primary school play term 2 and 3. So we were in the middle of our high school tour on the 22nd of February. And that was Dan Bain, Brendan Bennett, and Ralph McCubbin-Howell, who were doing Shakespeare as You Write It. We performed in Christchurch that morning. I remember Ralph came into the studio that lunchtime being like, hey, do you mind if I take the van home? I can't remember why, but I was like, yeah, do it. Which turned out to be so lucky because he got it out of the CBD.
Yeah.
Brendan literally lived on the second story. He was sitting on his couch that afternoon, rode his second story down to ground level, sitting on his couch, and then just walked onto his balcony and then walked onto the ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and luckily no one was in the flat beneath him.
Yeah.
Dan got a leak in his hot water cylinder, I think it was. So his place flooded, and Ralph was staying with Michael Bush, and their place was made out of brick and just crumbled down. So needless to say, we cancelled the shows the next day, and I think the day after that, it was a Tuesday, so Wednesday and Thursday, and I think it was Friday. I don't know how or what, but we were back on the road and doing shows in Timaru on Friday, and we finished off the whole tour.
Wow, crazy.
So, anyway, there's that one.
Yeah. Jumping forward about a decade.
Right, yep.
Little Andromeda. How did that sort of come about?
I'm pretty addicted to, I guess, doing new things. Mm-hmm. As soon as Orange opened, like I kind of knew what I wanted it to be, and I wanted it to be like largely a live space as well as a recording space. I wanted it to be a place that could be hospitality as well as, we didn't quite manage to get the kind of hospo side into Orange, but and it was also in Ferrymead, which turned out more and more to be harder to convince audiences to go out to. So in 2014, once Orange was open, I started working on plans for the next, for Little Andromeda. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, sorry, for Big Andromeda. So that was, 6 years ago? Putting together a business plan for it. Had some really cool things lined up, actually, and it was just supposed to be a space cabaret. Like I had this idea I wanted to do like a technology cabaret show largely for tourism market, but also I knew I had lots of mates that needed a theatre, so I wanted to make it one that could be shared with other groups, and initially I was like, right, so I want to build this space around the show, which is I'll do my show on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, but then that leaves 4 days a week that other people can get in there. Didn't take too much market research asking people if they'd be happy with that, for them to be like, like kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they would be the nights that other people would want to use it as well. So I kind of worked out there was a bit of a problem there that there's, that the weekends are going to be pretty prime time. And at the same time, I started dealing with the council who contact there, found out I was working on this plan saying, look, we've got some money to put into a multi-purpose theatre. Do you want to develop it towards that? And I was like, yeah, sweet. That sounds great. Like they had 15 million on the table to put a theatre up. And it was probably about 6 months into that when I realized there was obviously someone else vying for that share of the funding. I had this battle for a couple of years, and he obviously won that battle. So I was ready to give up, and actually I was ready to move to Melbourne. Possibly Wellington, probably Melbourne. Chris and me had talked about it. We were like, we can actually run Playhouse from anywhere. Like, it's a very, like, we tour the country, we tour Australia. We're pretty mobile. So yeah, I was pretty much ready to just leave the city, and not like sulking and storming out or anything, but just being like, all right, I've done my dash here. A few people were just like, don't give up, Mikey, don't give up. Like, we should keep pushing. And so we put this tent up, and I couldn't believe how many people got behind it then. And I think at that point, that's what really made the council see that there was a need for a multipurpose theatre in Christchurch. Until then, they were like, well, there hasn't been one before, really, so there's no use for it. There aren't any performing arts groups in Christchurch that we know of, so who are you building this for? It's too much of a risk. And, you're saying, look at Auckland, they've got Basement Theatre, look at, they've got Q Theatre, look at Wellington, there's Bats, right. And they're going like, what? Q, what? Bats, what? But then all of a sudden, we kind of had this thing where you just get this real sense that all the people that were making decisions, before go, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
And I think putting that tent up was just the best thing we could do, because it made it so much easier from there to say, this is what we're about. And from there, Anthony very kindly donated us the space on the terrace for a while. We're still there, and the council came back with more funding to help us get off. Like, we're still nowhere near we haven't got what we need yet, but we're getting closer and closer there every year. And I think we've really got the steam up, and I think people are kind of getting that what we are. We're not trying to present an alternative to the court theatre or anything, and I think we're showing that people want to come out and watch original stuff as well.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got the steam up now, and now I'm like, oh well, this is my lot. So I'm gonna stay here in Christchurch until I feel
fulfilled.
Yeah.
I think you are putting on shows for the artists. It's mainly for people to come and perform rather than to get audiences in to see theatre, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, obviously we think a lot about the audiences and really want to look after and develop and so on the audiences, but we wouldn't not program something just because we think only 5 people are going to turn up. If we're like, no, this work needs to be tested, even if only 5 people go, yeah, we'd have a crack.
Little Andromeda, have a crack. So another question that I like to ask performers is, what is your favourite role that you've played? Now, you haven't played any roles, but you did almost play a role.
This is right. Yes. I almost got cast in the court theatre production of The Seagull. I was backstage. Greg was there. We're in the costume department, and Elric Cooper, he just points at me. He sees me from across the room. He goes, you're perfect. And he walks over and he goes, what are you doing in 2 weeks' time? Will you be in The Seagull? And I was like, well, you know what? And Greg he just steps in front. He goes, I'll just stop you there, Mikey. Michael is a terrible actor. You don't want him. Go find someone else. And he's like, oh, okay then, okay. And he walked. I was like, Greg, that was my break. So I blame Greg for that to this day.
So I've touched a bit on coronavirus and this whole situation. Are you worried of what's going to come of it? Are you optimistic about what's going to happen?
By the time this podcast is released to the ether, whatever I say now is going to be completely out of date.
It's probably going to be out of date tomorrow.
Yeah. So we're currently talking on the 8th of April. Creative New Zealand has just released updated guidelines for what is relevant. Like, one of the really cool things is that Creative New Zealand are being like, we really want to help artists. We really want to get people through this. We really want to come to the party. So for that, I'm really grateful to Creative New Zealand. One of the question marks at the moment, as of 8th of April, 2020, is the criteria don't feel perfectly designed for theatre companies like Little Andromeda or New Zealand Playhouse. The reason I say that is they've kind of got these kahikatea groups who have got annual funding, and that annual funding is not going anywhere. And then the only question is, do they just need a bit more help from CNZ to top them up to make sure they can open their doors when they're ready again? And then you've got artists who are like, I've got a project and I can still deliver it. As long as I deliver it before the end of September, I can go for funding for that. Little A and New Zealand Playhouse are kind of fulfilling roles of kahikatea groups, but we haven't been CNZ clients. So
right.
like at the moment, I mean, our funding application for our winter season has just been deleted to make way for COVID-19 subsidies. So we've got no funding for that. We can reapply, but it's going to be reduced caps, and it can't just be for running the theatre, and it can't be for paying Holly and me. And it's exactly the same with New Zealand Playhouse. We want to just postpone this tour by a year, but that doesn't fit in with this project being done by September. We've got the government subsidy, but those wages all have to go to the people that we applied for them for. So that's where they're going. So I've just had to put my subsidies into the operating expenses of the businesses, because we can't apply for funding anywhere else for just general operating expenses. Like, it does feel really difficult for us at the moment, but that's only speaking from my perspective, and I know every arts organisation is going to have their own issues, and the fact that we're experiencing these issues at all means that we've had good luck in the past. So I don't want to complain again. I just feel like there are people in much better situations, but people in much worse situations as well. So
totally, obviously artists are struggling at the moment as well, and I think once this is all over, they're going to need somewhere to go and perform. And as we've talked about, I think Little Andromeda is that for Christchurch, at least. Hopefully that can be there when this is all over. Yeah, sure hope so. Just before the lockdown happened, we did a couple of shows, and one really cool show was with Blackboard Theatre Collective. Nomi did this pub quiz, and we said, if you want to come. If you want to stay at home. And everyone could participate from home or in the theatre, and it worked really, really well. So we're thinking, if and when we start up again, we want to do more shows like that, shows that are flexible to participate from home or in the theatre, and also shows that aren't going to be sort of totally put out if the day before they're supposed to go on, Cinda tells us we're back at level 4 again, that we've either can still go ahead with it, or we're not like, crap, we just spent 4 weeks of rehearsing to, put this thing on. That's not happening. So I'm really excited about our potential kind of staggered re-entry into this theatre. I'm excited too, Mikey. Hey guys, Future James here. I just wanted to give an update on this situation. Little A is going ahead with everything that Michael just laid out. The funding is still in the works. However, they are open for submissions for shows that will work at any level of lockdown. So if you have a show in mind, or you want to pitch something, you can find out more about it, as well as where to apply, on the Little Andromeda Facebook page, which is in the description. And now, back to the podcast. On a lighter note, you've been doing some hilarious Instagram stories. Nice. Do you want to catch people up to date as to just the general story of what's happened? Yeah, so currently on day 14 of me going to my imaginary cafe. Just started on day 1. I've got sachets to try and recreate my morning latte experience, having yarns with the coffee person, the barista. I've basically almost ended up falling in love with one of the baristas, but through a miscommunication, I'm straight, by the way, but now there's the guy here who is convinced I'm gay, and he thinks we're about to go on a date, and then accidentally got a job as a kitchen hand in there, and we've just realized that the whole cafe is actually a front for a cocaine operation. So I'm just posting daily updates when I make my coffee, and just imagining the goings on of this imaginary cafe. Trying to keep things, just like normal, really. Can't imagine where you'll be when this podcast is released. Maybe Future James will jump in and update. Thanks for the setup pass, James. Hey guys, Future James here again. So as New Zealand has moved into lockdown level 3, Michael can now get a real coffee from a real cafe, and so his imaginary cafe is now closed. Here's what happened after day 14. Jacinda Ardern came into the cafe, and Michael gave her a bag of cocaine for free. Next day's headline, Prime Minister admitted to Christchurch Hospital, fainted after cocaine overdose. Michael poisons the boyfriend of the girl that he fancies, and she asks him to go with her to the funeral. Michael thinks it's a date. It was not a date. Michael is fired from Imaginary Cafe for poisoning someone. Michael goes to another cafe and starts hitting it off with the barista there. She slips him a note. We're starting a cult, want to join. And now, back to the podcast. So this show is called Broadway and Other Kiwi Dreams. My dream is being a performer in theatre, not necessarily on Broadway, but that kind of area, and that's what inspired the name. I wanted to ask you, what is your Kiwi dream? Small, big, obscure, mainstream? What do you want to do that you maybe haven't already done?
I don't want to talk about it too much until I've actually decided if I can try and make it happen again, but once Little A's underway, I would like to try and get this Space Cabaret happening again.
Cool.
I'll need to find a new name for it because Andromeda's now been hijacked by this theatre. That's kind of something that I would think about doing in the medium term, but the only other thing is, like, I don't know, if you asked me 10 years ago, it was definitely to build a sound stage in Christchurch where like orchestras could record film scores. And I was just so excited about doing that, but I've kind of not really got any interest in doing that anymore. I think I keep changing as a person and kind of having thoughts about what I would love to do next. I reckon if you ask me again in 4 years' time, I'll have a completely different answer, to be honest. So I've kind of, just accepted the fact that I'm stopping having one life goal and just want to just see where the wind blows a little bit.
If this podcast is still around in 4 years, then we'll have you back and we'll see what you're doing then. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honoured to be on here.
Yeah, and you're within the first 4 guests, or 3 guests even.
Yes.
Yeah, so thanks, Mikey. Thanks to you at home for listening, and until next time, bye.
Kakite.
Hi everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed learning more about Michael and getting a sneak peek behind the curtain of a theatre company. As Michael said, you can find him on Instagram by searching @BassGit. That's BASSGIT. You can also find out more about Little Andromeda on their Facebook page. Just go to @LittleAndromeda_CHCH. You can check out more of the podcast by going to our website or any of our social media accounts. All of those links are in the description. Join me next week as I talk to someone who has persuaded some of the biggest names in theatre in the world to come to a little town called Christchurch and teach at his theatre school. On Broadway and Other Kiwi Dreams.